In 3 years of campaigning, never once has Avernus had a narrator. No one ever volunteers information. It must be sought, interpreted, and done on a viciously tight schedule, if at all. Over the course of this iteration of my party, we have blasted a path of destruction a blind man could follow through, a litany of enemies we knew very little about. There have been many times where the good guys and the bad guys have been simplified to them and us. In 3 short hours, a single mad bard on a suicide mission answered more questions than the rest of us combined ever have. Our bard and his 4 surviving infiltrators became hopelessly separated from the rest of the party. On the bright side, he missed the fight with a pair of demon princes. On a slightly less happy note, he was being chased by a horde of demons. Over the course of a number of checks and tricks, they managed to lose the demons by doubling back into a strange, narrow, metallic ridge soaring high above the blasted plains. A ridge made of adamantine, approximately 600 feet high and covered in runes. It probably didn't take a university-trained wizard to deduce that it was a half-buried ritual circle. But they had one, so it worked out anyways. Nor did it require a great leap to determine that it was active. The primary point of interest was probably the center, lost in the gloom of hell. The team decided to rappel down the giant metal plate to investigate. Halfway down the bard's arcane focus, a pocket watch began to vibrate as time slowed down to those around him. They came to a stop, but the bard continued into the abyss. At the center, he was greeted by a being made of words that seemed to vanish into nothing in the place its head should have been. It pointed him to a black sphere, which he, of course, touched. His pocket watch shattered as he was transported to a room containing a singular figure, a tiefling, whose appearance was wearing a black cloak of many red stars, a crown, and wielding a staff topped by a singular large red ruby. Asmodeus, the Devil King. But not yet. A specter of a place long since damned since the time immemorial. Asmodeus was polite, if strained, majestic without cruelty, yet quietly desperate. Above all else, our bard was entirely unfazed in the presence of the one who introduced himself as Asmodeus, great king of the 9 lands of fire. With a note of hope in his voice, Asmodeus stated that it must have worked because he was here. He tried to make them forget, but they fought back. Asmodeus held forth a piece of blackness and defined it, a tiny piece of an eyelid of an old god, the Great Old One, the first. 2 pieces they bound, but 3 they must be. The third must be bound to stop him. Ugak. As Asmodeus spoke, he noticed and intervened. The creature that sent the bard tried to pull him back, that strange dichotomy of wanting us to know but not, once again rearing its ugly head. The bard and the avatar of the Old One fought, mostly to a standstill. With one last burst of power, Asmodeus broke the ruby from his staff and thrust it through time into the bard's hand.
Do not forget, Ollie, of the material plane. You must be the beacon to those who remember. The third must be bound. The third must be bound.
Then the avatar struck. The bard managed to get off a plane shift as something happened to him. Something strange. Something significant. There, in the workshop of Teldin Bigby, with an infernal rune carved into his hand, the bard stood with his blade in his hand. The blade he had always had and always would have. A blade of bone and ash, with an ornately carved handle and a pommel containing a single large red ruby. Inscribed on the blade the last words of Jacques Gaston, the Lord Bardlock, swallowed up by an eerily similar pack blade so many sessions ago. This actually happened last summer, and I'm just now getting around to writing the story. It was the first time our troop did a DMD campaign during a camping trip together, and every camping trip that was fairly long since then, we've done campaigns. Anyways, the first thing to note was that our DM started us off in a dungeon with all our gear stripped away, so that was fun for me, being a half-elf fighter for that game. To get to the good part, I'll just summarize and say that we got out all right and started walking through the forest to find a village or something. By now we've got some weapons and things from that castle we broke out of. Suddenly, we are ambushed by a group of spiders in the middle of the forest. We don't have too much trouble with them, but one of my friends did the ultimate power move. So our DM likes to do a thing where if we do the finishing blow on a monster, we get to describe how we kill it. So, on one of the spiders, my friend, who is a dragonborn paladin, was able to kill it. So, here's how he describes killing the spider. He takes his sword and stabs the spider in the head, pinning it to the ground. He then proceeds to go around the back of the spider, grab it by the abdomen, spread open the hole where the silk comes out, and breathes fire into it, cooking it from the inside out. He said he was, quote, gonna clap them spider cheeks, before he described it. So now we all know his character as the clapper of spider cheeks. He got an inspiration point for that hilarious action. Fast forward a bit to find us in a town. A blind old dude with some sort of magic powers informs us that we have magic things implanted in us, and that if we go further than the bakery, we'll explode. So, we have to go back to the castle to find the necromancer that put this stuff in our heads. Before we do, we rest at the tavern, and another friend comes up with the idea to take the metal of our chains and things we brought from the dungeon and make it into a giant spoon for the spider cheek clapper. He was a cleric of the forge, so he had a spell to mold something of his choice out of metal during a long rest. So he does that, and now our Dragonborn Paladin has a 6-foot-long spoon as a weapon. Back in the forest, we're ambushed by even more spiders, led by a neon blue one that can turn invisible. The DM described it like it was chuckling when they ambushed us, and the spider cheek clapper was like, ooh, he should not be chuckling, spiders can't chuckle. So during the battle, it was more challenging, but a couple of funny things happened. Not as good as the first thing, but they're still good to mention. First off, my character is supposed to be really good with bows, and he got a longbow and arrows from a hunter's cabin we found earlier. So when we're ambushed, he runs as far as he can in one turn away from the group and the spiders, turns around, and shoots one right between the eyes, dealing more than half its health. He was also away from range of any of the spider's attacks, so completely safe to shoot from a distance. However, on a completely different note, the character that made the giant spoon wasn't doing as good as my guy. He cast Fire Spell on his battle axe to make it cloaked in flames, but rolled a natural 1. Our DM makes it so that if for an attacking roll we roll a nat 1, we have to roll again to see if we critical miss. If the second roll is below 10, we deal damage to ourselves like we would have if we would hit the enemy. So he rolls and rolls lower than 10, getting a critical miss. So we see his character enchant the battle axe, reel up to get a great hit on a spider, and completely misses, hitting a tree and the axe bouncing back, striking him in the head, dealing loads of damage and setting him on fire. Another critical miss that happened that battle was none other than the Spider Cheek Clapper. For one attack he was going for, he rolled a nat 1. He had an ability to roll again once if he gets a 1 or 2, so he was able to roll again, but he got a 2. He then used his inspiration point to re-roll again, nat 1. I have never seen the will to live drain from a person so fast. He just stared at the dice for a moment with a face of pure disappointment and left the tent. We all cracked up. We worked it out eventually, but I don't remember what actually happened in the battle from that action. So from there, we kept going on our adventure, but there isn't much more to tell. We didn't finish the campaign because we ran out of time during our camping trip, and we never got together to finish it in our own time. But dang, we had some good laughs from it. First of all, I would like to apologize to the D team. So this happened last night during our weekly campaign that we've been running for over 2 years. The party consists of me, the barbarian, our other party tank, a homebrew class, the wizard, rogue, a bard, and a druid, all level 11. This was our DM's baby, a heavily homebrewed post-World War I Forgotten Realms. We had spent the past year of the campaign in and out of character attempting to break a siege of Waterdeep. We finally returned with the army that we had mustered, got inside the walls with, quote, minimal casualties. We had finally gotten the thing we had fought for so long. In gratitude and in preparation for the battle, the Open Lord, Queen of Waterdeep, gave us all a shard of cloth or metal that looks like they all used to be one piece. So we began our assault on the enemy line. We were clearing a path pretty well, and we're running low on resources. Health was good overall, but very little spells, potions, and etc. All of a sudden, our advance was stopped by a wall of force. When the wall fell, there were 13 juggernauts and colossus, home-brewed monsters. All of our supporting NPCs were cut down in a round, and we were tasked with holding the line until reinforcements arrived. We did really well until round 2. Other tank was unconscious and surrounded by 4 and the commander. I was down to 25 health, and the rest of the party had teleported or ran to where they could snipe with long-range spells, essentially off the battle map. We were told reinforcements were coming, but we didn't know how many rounds until they arrived. Myself and our other tank had essentially signed off on our deaths at this point. Now our DM had given us an item that was essentially powered by an unstable energy cell, and a high intelligence roll from myself and the wizard knew that if it was damaged, a massive explosion would result. Now by this point, plan A through J had failed, and it was essentially hide or run. and myself and the other tank could not without taking a lethal number of attacks. So I looked at Cerberus's player, the tank. We both nodded, and I shattered the item over my leg. The shocked look on the DM's face told me that I had messed up. He pulled out his phone and ran some numbers. He said you all see a bright flash and loud boom, all centered on Z. You all take 1,000 points of radiant and fire damage. But about 5 minutes later, you all open your eyes and are all in a pile of a massive crater. The pieces the Open Lord gave you are all gone, and anything within 2 city blocks is dead, with no hope of revivication. Now, at first, we all just thought that the DM saved us from a definite TPK and removed an artifact we didn't know what it did from our inventories. He then pauses the game and told us that each of those pieces were a part of the mantle of the Open Lord, an item that would have granted us each a wish once we had done the proper research into learning what it was, and that they had all activated in returning us to the state where we previously were before the explosion. I could feel the salt from around the table. However, because of my actions, I nuked the BBEG of the campaign into oblivion and saved the city. At that point, the DM and us decided this was a good spot to end the campaign. Myself, the wizard, and the rogue split the Open Lord seat after that, and the rest of the party went on to do other heroic and legendary things, and that's where the game ended. Tildir. Barbarian triggered a nuke at the center of Waterdeep and destroyed the party's items that gave them all a wish in order for us to survive the blast.